The subject of this video is Simchat Torah and the difference between Simchat Torah and Shavuot. So I want to begin with a little background about Simchat Torah as a holy day in Judaism. I'm purposely using the term holy day and not holiday because the term holiday in English has connotations of fun, enjoyment, vacation, and the holy days of Judaism are very sacred and a time that are meant to be a very deep and profound spiritual experience. So in terms of Simchat Torah as a holy day, Simchat Torah is not found in the Bible at all. It's not found in the Talmudic literature. It's a later historical development in the Jewish tradition. And we celebrate Simchat Torah on the 8th day of Sukkot in the land of Israel. Outside the land of Israel, festivals, Passover, Shavuot and Sukkot, the festival days are 2 days, so that in the diaspora, Simchat Torah will be the 9th day of Sukkot. But in the land of Israel, Simchat Torah is the 8th day of Sukkot, but the first day of Sukkot is a holy day, and the 8th day is a holy day. And the intermediary days of Sukkot have the status of a semi-holy day. But the holy days of Sukkot are the first and the 8th day, so that Simchat Torah was then imposed, as a later historical development, imposed on the 8th day of Sukkot. And the 8th day of Sukkot in the Bible, in the 5 books of Moses, is called Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret literally means, Shmini is 8th, and Atzeret comes from a word that means to stop, so it can be seen as the 8th day that's the closing of the festival of Sukkot. And it may also mean assembly, and an 8th day of assembly, but in any case, Simchat Torah was imposed in our tradition on the 8th day of Sukkot. And so now, the difference between Simchat Torah and Shavuot is both of these holy days relate to Torah. So the question is, what's the difference between them? But let me start with what's in common Torah, the term Torah. The term Torah is the central term of our tradition, the rabbinic tradition, the Jewish tradition. And the term Torah literally means guidance, instruction. And according to our tradition, we have 2 kinds of instruction, guidance, that Torah consists of: halakha, law, and agadah, moral, spiritual guidance. So the term halakha, law, literally it comes from a root that means to go, to walk, that the law is the path upon which a traditional Jew goes or walks. And walking is an external activity of a human being. It implies something external because law is external. It's an external system of authority. Law tells us you do this, you don't do that. This is permissible, this is forbidden. And the Talmudic rabbis also used a term for law, gufei Torah, that means literally bodies of the Torah. That law is the bodily aspect of Torah, the external aspect. The spiritual aspect is agadah, and agadah means story, because a story is a source of ideals, ideas. And so agadah then is the moral and spiritual guidance of the Jewish tradition. This is the soul, as it were, of Judaism, the essence of Judaism, of Torah. Torah then can be used in the specific sense of the 5 books of Moses as a kind of constitution of the Jewish people, a legal constitution that the Jewish law is based on the commandments, mitzvot of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And also the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, is not just a legal constitution, but a foundation of the Jewish tradition, that it's a source of moral and spiritual guidance as well. So that Torah can mean specifically the 5 books of Moses. It can mean more broadly Judaism. That the term Judaism doesn't appear at all in the Bible or in the Talmudic literature. When the Talmudic rabbis speak of Judaism, they use this word Torah, so that the Torah means not just the 5 books of Moses, it means Judaism as a whole, and Judaism and Torah consists again of legal guidance and moral and spiritual guidance of how to live. So now to the difference then between simchat Torah, which literally means the joy of Torah, simchat Torah, and Sukkot, by the way, according to our tradition, is the time of our joy. So that simchat Torah is the joy of Torah. Okay? And Shavuot, that according to our tradition, Shavuot is the receiving of our Torah, or according to tradition, it's called actually Zman Matan Toratenu, means literally the giving of our Torah, the receiving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, the giving of Torah. So let me start with Shavuot to distinguish Shavuot from Simchat Torah. And Shavuot then, and according to our tradition, the time of the giving of our Torah, the receiving of our Torah on Mount Sinai. So what we're celebrating then on Shavuot is actually the birth of the Jewish people. Okay? The birth of the Jewish religion. So remember that Judaism is a religion, not in an orthodox sense, orthodox correct belief sense of a faith commitment. Judaism is not a faith commitment. Judaism is a religion in an orthoprax sense, orthoprax correct deeds, because Judaism is a religion in the sense of a way of life, a culture, Torah. Torah is a culture, a way of life, legal guidance, moral, spiritual guidance of how to live. It's the way of life of the Jewish people. So that Judaism as a religion has both these elements of peoplehood, nationhood, peoplehood, and religion, in the sense of a culture, way of life of the Jewish people. So that on Passover, we're celebrating the birth of the Jewish people, the exodus from Egypt, that our ancestors, the Israelites, were slaves in Egypt, who escaped out of slavery in Egypt and formed themselves into a people, Israel, in the wilderness. And so that Passover is the birth of the Jewish people, and Shavuot then, what we're celebrating is the birth of the Jewish religion in the sense of Torah, our way of life as a people. And specifically, that Shavuot is the time of the receiving of our Torah, the giving of our Torah, is on Mount Sinai. Means that's referring specifically to the 5 books of Moses. According to our tradition, the 5 books of Moses were given on Mount Sinai. Now, in the biblical account, that's not written anywhere in the Bible, that the 5 books of Moses, Torah in the sense of the 5 books of Moses, that the books were received on Mount Sinai. That's not written. What is written in the biblical account, what we received on Mount Sinai, the Jewish people, is 2 things. One is the 10 statements. The biblical term is 10 statements, not 10 commandments. 10 commandments is a misnomer, a mistranslation. The biblical term is 10 statements, and that passage includes various commandments, mitzvot. And what also is received on Mount Sinai is additional mitzvot, commandments that are not apart from the commandments of the 10 statements. So those are the 2 things that we receive on Mount Sinai, the 10 statements and additional commandments. But according to tradition, we received the 5 books of Moses on Sinai, Torah. So this is what we're celebrating on Shavuot, is the receiving of Torah, the 5 books of Moses on Mount Sinai, and more broadly, the birth of Judaism as a religion, our way of life, Torah, of the Jewish people. And the essence of Torah, then, this is what we're really celebrating then on Shavuot, is the essence of Torah. The essence of Torah, if we go back to the 5 books of Moses, again is a kind of constitution of the Jewish people, that the Jewish law is based on the commandments, mitzvot, of the Torah, 5 books of Moses. And not just a legal constitution, but the foundation of Judaism in terms of moral and spiritual guidance. So if we go back to the foundation of our tradition, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the essence of Torah, of Judaism, is morality. And if I were to choose one verse that captures the essence of religion and the biblical conception. It's the verse in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 18. You shall do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. Right, righteous, and good in the eyes of the Lord. The term is actually righteous and good in the eyes of the Lord. And so that it's speaking of morality above and beyond law. The previous verse, right before this verse, speaks of observance of commandments in a legal sense. And then it says, and you shall do that which is right, righteous and good in the eyes of the Lord, meaning above and beyond law. And both Rashi and Nachmanides, two of our greatest commentators, medieval commentators in the Jewish tradition, both understand the verse in this sense, and you should do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord, above and beyond law. It is speaking about morality, a life of righteousness, goodness, right living. And also the name of the Jewish people, Israel. If we divide it in the middle, it literally, Yashar El, means Yashar is righteous, El God, righteous of God. The word were to be a people devoted to righteousness, right living. And the word righteous that appears in the name Israel, Yashar, is the same word that appears in the verse, and you should do that which is righteous and good in the eyes of the Lord. We're to be a people devoted to righteousness and goodness, right living. And Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, is singled out in the Bible. In the book of Genesis, chapter 18, Abraham is singled out by God. He's singled out as one who will keep the way of the Lord to do justice and righteousness. Now the word righteous there, to keep the way of the Lord to do justice and righteousness, the word righteousness there is not the same word as found in the name Israel, Yashar, and in the verse you should do that which is righteous and good in the eyes of the Lord. But it's a synonym, and it's speaking of morality again. Abraham is a person who will keep the way of the Lord to do justice and righteousness. And notice then the orthoprax emphasis in the biblical conception of religion, both in the verse you shall do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord, and the verse regarding Abraham that he will keep the way of the Lord to do justice and righteousness. The orthoprax emphasis, correct deeds. Doing, not believing. You should do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. Abraham will keep the way of the Lord. What's the way? The way of the Lord to do, not to believe, to do justice and righteousness. So this then is the essence of Torah in the biblical conception. The essence of Torah is righteousness, goodness, morality, right living. Okay? So this is what we're celebrating then on Shavuot, is the essence of Torah, of Judaism. Law is an integral part of our tradition, but it's an external bodily aspect of Torah. The essence of Torah is the Agadah, the spiritual aspect, and the essence of Torah that we're celebrating on Shavuot is morality, right living. This is the essence of Torah of Judaism, and this is what we're celebrating on Shavuot. Now to Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah, literally it means joy of Torah. And it's appropriate then that it is on the 8th day of Sukkot, because Sukkot, again, according to our tradition, is the time of our joy, Zman Simchatenu. So that Simchat Torah then is the joy of Torah. What does it mean, the joy of Torah? Here what we're celebrating is not the essence of Torah, as on Shavuot, morality, right living. That's not what we're celebrating on Simchat Torah. What we're celebrating on Simchat Torah is the simcha, the joy that comes from the study of Torah. Because what we're celebrating on Simchat Torah is the completion of a cycle of reading of the Torah throughout the year in the synagogue, and the beginning of a new cycle of reading the Torah. So that according to in our tradition, we read a portion of the Torah, a section of the Torah. We read each Shabbat, each Sabbath throughout the year. We read a section of the Torah. There's also on holy days, there's a section of the Torah that's that's read that's appropriate to the specific holy day. And but on the Sabbaths, the Shabbat, every Sabbath we read a section of the Torah, so that during the course of a year we read the entire Torah from beginning to end, from the beginning of the book of Genesis through the book of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, to the book of Deuteronomy, and we finish at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, and then we begin a new cycle again. And that occurs on Simchat Torah, that we finish the reading for the previous year, and we begin the new cycle for the next year. So that the reading that we read on Simchat Torah, the Torah reading, the portion of the Torah that we read, is the end of the Torah, the end of the book of Deuteronomy, and the beginning of the book of Genesis, beginning a new cycle. So this is what we're celebrating on Simchat Torah, is the joy that comes from the study of Torah. So I want to say some words now about the importance of study of Torah in the Jewish tradition. And I have a series of video classes that are an introduction to Judaism. And it's a 3-part series. Each part has 2 to 3 videos. And the third part deals with the importance of study in the Jewish tradition. It consists of 2 videos. So I'm going to just say some brief words here in relation to Simchat Torah, about the importance of study in the Jewish tradition. Study is a central commandment of the Jewish tradition, mitzvah, a central commandment, one of the most important commandments of our tradition. And the commandment is called Talmud Torah, and which literally means study of Torah. Talmud is study here. Talmud Torah, the study of Torah. And what this means is rigorous intellectual study. And the place of study in the Jewish tradition is the yeshiva. That yeshivot were ancient rabbinical academies that emerged during the ancient Talmudic period. And yeshiva was the traditional place of learning in Judaism. And within the yeshiva, the Beit Midrash means the study hall. The Beit Midrash is the place of learning in the yeshiva. So now you can study anywhere in Judaism, and you can study outside of a yeshiva, outside of the Beit Midrash. But the traditional place of learning is the yeshiva, the Beit Midrash, the study hall. Just as regarding prayer, we can pray anywhere in Judaism, but the traditional place of prayer is the synagogue. Okay, so Talmud Torah is a central commandment of the Jewish tradition. It's even more important than prayer or the traditional prayers. As far as the traditional prayers that we pray in our prayer book, those traditional prayers have the status of rabbinic law according to all legal authorities in the Jewish tradition, halachic legal authorities. As the status of rabbinic law, we have different sources of authority in terms of Jewish law. We have a law that is regarded as biblical law, laws from the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. There's biblical law, we have rabbinic law, and customs of the Jewish people. So the most authoritative law is biblical law, the most important and most authoritative. And so according to all opinions, the traditional prayers that we pray in our traditional prayer book are rabbinic in terms of the status is rabbinic law. And where Talmud Torah is regarded as a mitzvah from the Torah, even though it's not found in the plain meaning of the Torah. Notice again that in Judaism, traditional Judaism, we live not by the Bible as it's written. We live by the Bible as it's understood and interpreted by the Jewish rabbinic tradition. So as an example, the verse, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, literally means bodily punishment. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We don't live by the Bible as it's written, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, bodily punishment. According to the rabbinic tradition, the verse is understood from a legal point of view to mean monetary compensation and not bodily punishment. So too, Talmud Torah, in terms of rigorous intellectual study, is not found in the Bible. In the Bible, there is there are verses that speak of study of Torah, but it's in a general sense of moral and spiritual guidance. It's not in the sense of rigorous intellectual study. What went on in the yeshiva when we're talking about Talmud Torah is rigorous intellectual study of texts. The method of study was argument, debate over texts, so that this is rigorous intellectual study, and such study is not found in the Bible. But nevertheless, just the same as an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth is not understood literally as bodily punishment, it's understood as monetary compensation. So too the study that's spoken of in the Bible is understood more broadly as Talmud Torah, according to tradition, rigorous intellectual study. Okay, so that this commandment then is even more important than prayer. It has the status of biblical law, where prayer, the traditional prayers of our traditional prayer book, have the status of rabbinic law. The Talmud Torah is more important than prayer in our tradition, and also the Beit Midrash is regarded as more sacred than the Beit Knesset, the synagogue. And also we have a saying. A traditional Jew says each morning, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The study of Torah is equivalent to all of the other commandments. It's that important. It's such a central commandment in our tradition. Now, one other thing that I want to address in this regard in terms of the importance of study is that study in our tradition is subordinate to morality, the essence of Torah, in the biblical conception. So there's a debate in the Talmud, which is greater, Talmud Torah or good deeds? Good deeds, morality. And Rebbe Tarfon, a great Talmudic teacher, holds the view that good deeds are greater than Talmud Torah. He's very faithful then to the Bible. And where again, Talmud Torah is not found in the plain meaning of the Bible. That's the Bible according to our tradition. Okay, that it's biblical law, but it's not found in the plain meaning. In the plain meaning of the Bible, the essence of Torah is good deeds, morality. You should do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. Rebbe Tarfon is very faithful to the biblical conception. The more important than Talmud Torah is good deeds. Rebbe Akiva says more important is Talmud Torah. And this apparently is a kind of a Greek view, because in Talmud Torah, rigorous intellectual study isn't found in the Bible in the plain meaning of the Bible. Why? Because it's an influence of the surrounding Hellenistic Greek culture during the early Talmudic period. In the early Talmudic period, the Talmudic rabbis are living in a Greek Hellenistic world. And in Greece, the highest ideal is intellect, developed of intellect, reason. The Bible, the ideal is morality. You should do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord, a life of righteousness and goodness. The ideal of ancient Greece is intellect, reason. And so that the importance of Talmud Torah, of rigorous intellectual study in the Jewish tradition, is an influence from the surrounding Greek culture. So that Rabbi Akiva, in saying that Talmud Torah is greater than good deeds, is apparently holding some kind of a Greek view. However, the rabbis say Talmud Torah is greater because it will bring us to good deeds. It will lead to good deeds. And they're interpreting Rabbi Akiva's intent. They're not disagreeing with him. Rabbi Akiva really doesn't have a Greek view. He is ultimately faithful to the Bible. Because why is it clear that the rabbis are interpreting his intent? Because Rabbi Akiva holds that the fundamental principle of the Torah, of Judaism, is the verse from the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 18, love your neighbor as yourself, morality. So that Rabbi Akiva is aware that the essence of Torah is morality. You should do that which is right and good in the eyes of the Lord. Love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord is the continuation of the verse. And so Rabbi Akiva holds that the essence of Judaism is morality. But Talmud Torah is greater than good deeds in his conception, in a paradoxical sense that it's a means to lead us to a life of morality. So it's subordinate to morality. Okay, one last thing in relation to simchat Torah, and that is that it means the joy of Torah, and there's a widespread custom. I don't know how this is developed, but in my mind this custom is a desecration of Torah, and that is that on Simchat Torah, Jews drink alcohol, and sometimes even becoming drunk. And notice, and this in my mind is a desecration, because the joy of Torah, Simchat Torah, should be something internal, coming from the study of Torah, and not external alcohol, especially. And notice that on Purim, we have a special commandment, Rava, in the Talmud. Rava is a great Talmudic teacher. Rava says that there's an obligation. Every person is obligated on Purim to get drunk. And the term in Aramaic means to get drunk, to the point that we can't distinguish between cursed be Haman and blessed be Mordechai. Cursed be Haman. Haman is the villain of the story, and Mordecai the hero. So that Rava is saying we should get drunk to the point that we can't tell the difference between the righteous and the wicked, between right and wrong, good and bad. And that is very problematic. The Talmud immediately upon bringing Rava's opinion objects and brings a story. I won't tell the story, but the point of the story is that from a practical point of view, to get drunk to the point that we can't distinguish between right and wrong is dangerous. And so there are halachic legal authorities who therefore rule that we shouldn't get drunk as Rava rules. We shouldn't get drunk, and we should drink maybe just a little bit of wine and go to sleep. And in our sleep we can't distinguish then between right and wrong. We can get to the state that Rava is interested in our getting to, a state where we can't distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad. So in any case, that's a special commandment on Purim. That's even problematic. But on Simchat Torah, there's no such commandment to drink or to get drunk. Certainly not to get drunk, but no commandment to drink. But I think it's simply a desecration, because, again, the joy of Torah should come out of study. So I want to finish with a Hasidic story that the Hasidic movement, again, is a movement, a form of Jewish mysticism that began in the 19th century. And great Hasidic teachers told stories, oftentimes formulated their teachings in the form of stories. So there's a Hasidic story of a rabbi who is preoccupied with the question of what is Olam Haba, literally the next world, Olam Haba, which the next world, it's a central term in the rabbinic tradition that is generally understood as referring to life after death. So if we go back to the Bible, there is no such term in the Bible, Olam Haba. The Bible, there's very little talk at all about any life after death. None, almost none whatsoever. Very little in the way of talk of life after death in the Bible. And there's no term Olam Haba. The term Olam Haba is a rabbinic term that develops and it becomes a central term in the Talmudic literature. And again, generally it's understood as life after death. And so this rabbi is preoccupied with the question, what is Olam Haba? And he has a dream one night, falls asleep, he has a dream, and in his dream he's transported up to the heavens, and he stands before God, and he begs of God, please show me Olam Haba. Where is Olam Haba? And God says to him, come, my son, please come with me. And God takes him by the hand, takes him to a room. God opens the door for him, and God says, look inside. And so the rabbi looks inside, and what does he see? A Beit Midrash. And there's shelves filled with books, tables, and on the tables are books that are open, and sitting and standing around there are scholars and the pious and the righteous, and they're arguing and debating and studying Talmud Torah. They're studying in the Beit Midrash, and the rabbi puts his hand on his forehead. He says, what? He says to God, you mean to tell me, God, this is Olam Haba? This is the reward of the scholars and the pious and the righteous? And God says, oh, you misunderstand, my son. He says to him, the scholars and the pious and the righteous are not in Olam Haba. Olam Haba is in them. Olam Haba, according to the story, is not a geographical place. It's a spiritual experience. And it's an experience that we can experience here in this life. in this life, we can experience the next world, Olam Haba, a spiritual experience. I think this story is faithful to the Jewish tradition, that this is the joy of simchat Torah that comes from study, the deep fulfillment that's internal and spiritual. And this is what we're to be celebrating on simchat Torah. Thank you.